Hi, I'm Justin Boyd.
And I am the Drew Master, their friend from the north.
And we are the Watchers in the Basement. Welcome to the Watchers in the Basement. We are here today to discuss the latest and final movie in the DC Extended Universe. That movie is Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. But before I get Drew's thoughts on the film, I'm going to hit you with some Lost Kingdom facts. The Lost Kingdom is the, of course, direct sequel to the 2018 Aquaman movie. It is the officially the 15th movie in the DCEU, unofficially the 16th, of course, because they made two Justice League movies. There's a Zack Snyder cut, which is obviously much better. The movie came out as we're recording this. It's December 22nd, which is the day the movie comes out. So we saw the movie yesterday. So no box office information yet. However, I do want to mention that the first movie, the first Aquaman movie, made 1.1 billion, making it easily the highest grossing film of the DCEU. And it's the third highest grossing WB film of all time. Only 8 films have grossed $1 billion worldwide. And Drew, I'm just pop quiz for you. Can you name a WB movie you think that made $1 billion?
I cannot. There's been too many Warner Brother movies that go through my head that I'd have to think and put a monetary value to.
So some of them are not too surprising. The first one, the highest grossing of all time, actually came this year. It's Barbie, 1.4 billion.
Okay.
Yeah, so Barbie. The second highest grossing WB movie is Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, which we just reviewed in the past month or so. It made 1.3 billion. You have Aquaman 2018, 1.1 billion. The Dark Knight Rises in 2012 made 1.08 billion. Joker in 2019 made over $1 billion, as did The Dark Knight in 2008. And Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone made $1 billion in 2001. And then The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey in 2012 made $1 billion. So those are the 8 films. 3 of which have Batman related characters, 4 of which are DC. The other 2 are Harry Potter and of course Barbie. So I thought that was interesting. The fact that we have 8 WB movies of all time, and then in the MCU itself, you have like 10 or 11 that made $1 billion. So a little bit different. Before I go any further, I just want to say we've got some people join us in the chat. Walking with the Woods, good to have you all on the show. We appreciate when y'all check us out. We know y'all are over in the UK, I believe, so there's quite a bit of a time difference. So thanks for checking us out. We appreciate it. So back to the Lost Kingdom facts. A budget of 205 million. I don't know. I'm really interested to see what this movie is going to make the box office. I don't think it's going to do very well. I hope it does better. Runtime of 2 hours and 4 minutes. Once again, directed by James Wan, who also directed the first Aquaman film. And the movie was written by David Leslie Johnson McGoldrick. And I mentioned that because James Wan, the director, and Jason Momoa have a story credit on the movie. So kind of cool that the main star would also have a story credit. And then the cast includes Jason Momoa, Patrick Wilson, Amber Heard, Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, Nicole Kidman, Dolph Lundgren, Randall Park, Temuera Morrison, Martin Short, and John Rhys Davies. Drew, what are your thoughts on Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom?
I did enjoy it. It's nowhere near as good as the first one, unfortunately. I thought the first one was decent and a fun movie. I did enjoy it. And then we talked a little bit before we went live. There are times it felt like Pirates of the Caribbean with some of the seagoing stuff, but I guess that's par for the course. And then there's the stuff with undead and necromancy that kind of had a little bit of the Lord of the Rings feel. But I enjoyed it, and it was interesting because the ticket said 2 hours and 20 minutes on mine, but it was really just about 2 hours, so it didn't feel too long.
Yeah, that's one of the big differences between this movie for me, because I think that the 2 Aquaman movies are very much on the same level. They're on par with each other. The first Aquaman movie, of course, is very successful. I don't think this one will be, but the first movie was like 2 hours and 23 minutes, and I've seen it a couple of times. I rewatched it actually this week, getting ready for the Lost Kingdom, and it feels like a longer movie. So I was happy that this one was only 2 hours. That made it, I think, to me, because they're so close. I think I gave this movie the edge as in being better than the first one.
Oh,
it's very close. There's probably some recency bias. I just saw this movie, so it's fresh in my mind, and I thought the action was pretty spectacular. The fight scenes with Black Manta and Jason and Aquaman, the Trident fight scene toward the end, that was very much like a lightsaber, like a Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader kind of fight. What are your thoughts on the action, in this film?
I thought the one thing this movie, The Lost Kingdom, had over the first one, I thought the humor was a lot better and fit in when it needed to. I mean, we're going to talk about some possible call outs to other universes out there, but some comments that were made were rather hilarious and timely too. So the action was, I thought the Trident fight from the first movie between the Ocean Master, hence why I like to call myself the Drew Master, but King Orm and Aquaman, I thought that was a really good scene and well choreographed. There was, the one thing that was interesting is there were two bad guys, between Black Manta and I can't think of the Necromancy King from the Lost Kingdom, but it was fun to see, and they definitely could wield it. I was starting to get some Darth Maul fight vibes. I not in a negative way, but it was impressive. So yeah, I agree with you on the action. This one was a little more action packed. I still like the Trident fight the first one a little bit better than the Trident fights I saw from this one, but that's just me.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, the other villain in the film was King Kordax.
Okay.
He is the king of the Lost Kingdom, which is the kingdom of Necrus. So of course everyone at home knows that now. I mean, the one thing I do like about this movie is that it is a direct sequel, whereas it does feel like these two movies feel like a two-part story, because everything that was set up in the first one is paid off in the second one. Like in the first one, they do mention there is a Lost Kingdom, and you're like, oh, well, that points to probably a sequel. They mentioned the other kingdoms. Dolph Lundgren's character is talking to Orm in the first one, and he's mentioning the different kingdoms, and it's kind of an exposition dump for the audience, but you're learning about these different kingdoms, the brine and the fishermen, and obviously Atlantis and all that stuff. But then, just like how that's paid off in the sequel, also Black Manta's storyline is paid off, because in the Black Manta is Aquaman's main foe, right? In the comics, that's his main, that's his Joker,
right,
per se, for Batman. So with what happens to Black Manta in the first movie, his father dies. Aquaman doesn't kill his father, but Aquaman, could have saved Black Manta's dad. He refuses to do so. And so, now Black Manta is like hell-bent on revenge. And in the first movie, he teams up with Orm to try to get the technology needed to take down Aquaman. Doesn't work out in his favor. And then in the post-credit of the first film, he gets hooked up with Dr. Shin, played by Randall Park. And Dr. Shin, who, has been fascinated with Atlantis for much of his life, now has hold of Atlantean technology, and he helps, kind of rebuild Black Manta, his power suit, and gets him back up and running. And then we pick up in this movie where Black Manta is now, in search of Atlantis. And while in search of Atlantis, he kind of stumbles upon the Black Trident, which, gives him these powers that, like we said before, the powers of this Lost Kingdom and this Korvax, this evil king. And I thought the Black Trident was pretty cool. I liked how, when he put it together, it lit up and it was green, and his eyes would light up green. And I mean, it's kind of a simple kind of storyline, but I enjoyed Black Manta in this movie. What do you think about the character?
I liked how they linked, the Black Trident was a cool idea, and obviously there was plenty of alluding to it in the previews for the movie. They didn't, I don't remember them showing any of the previews, and I could be wrong with, how it worked when you put it together, and then lighting up and getting the visions about the Lost Kingdom, about Necrus, and, the power that could be bestowed. But I agree with everything you said about the ties. If there was one thing this movie did really well is it kept consistency from the storyline of the first one. And I was a huge fan of Thor: Love and Thunder, so I did have some Thor: Love and Thunder feel and vibes at times to this movie in a good way. Like when the recap of the story was, hey, I got married, I got a job. If I kind of felt like when Korg was telling, the story about the Space Viking, it was all good stuff for those that may not have seen the first Aquaman, which is still, I think, worth a watch for everybody. I watched it Wednesday night, since I was going to go see yesterday afternoon too. and it was, I felt consistency from the storyline between the two, and well done. I think I mentioned to you prior before in live, I was surprised, and I didn't watch any social media or anything going in the movie, but Amber Heard was back as Mara, and how much Mara was in the movie and her role, and it really surprised me with everything that had gone down in her with the Johnny Depp and stuff and all that. But I wasn't sure. I knew they couldn't have the story without Mara, and I was glad to see her, not replaced. And I think that's kept some consistency. It was always good to see Temuera Morrison. He's fun, and Nicole Kidman, and it was good that they brought Patrick Wilson back and with the storyline. I mean, the previews of the movie, you definitely saw that. But I agree with everything you say about consistency, and that's what made it enjoyable. It wasn't, kind of like the lost brother Jacob from the Fast and Furious. How do you not know you have a third? You have a lost brother. I mean, they kept everything tied very well together. So
yeah, and you just kind of highlighted the cast. That I think the cast is pretty spectacular in this movie. I think Patrick Wilson maybe is the standout. Obviously, Jason Momoa, it's his movie, but Patrick Wilson's really good whenever he enters the fray. Basically, if you saw the first movie, that, Orm is sent to this prison on this like desert kingdom, or, in the desert. So there's not a lot of water. So he's sent there, and, because of that, he's lost a lot of weight. He's very skinny looking. And basically, in this movie, Aquaman realizes the only way he can combat what Black Manta has done, because Black Manta, obviously, now that he's got the power of this other kingdom and this black trident, he's more powerful than Aquaman. And so the only way to stop him is Aquaman decides, I need to, get my brother out. My brother can help me. And so then the movie kind of becomes like a buddy comedy between like these two brothers who, you mentioned like it's very much like Thor and Loki. And so much so that like in the movie, at one point, I keep saying Jason Momoa, Aquaman calls Orm Loki, like as a joke. He's like, hey, Loki, once we take care of this, we can send you back to Azkaban, which is obviously is a Harry Potter reference, which is obviously, the Prisoner of Azkaban, which is a Harry Potter movie. And of course, Orm was a prisoner before Aquaman breaks him out in this movie. But you talked about the comedy. Couple of the funnier lines was when he breaks out Orm from the prison, and Orm is very, very skinny. And he calls him, he says, "Hey, Castaway, come on, get Wilson, let's go."
I remember Skinny Jeans too,
Yeah,
when he calls him Skinny Jeans.
Yeah. So
the crowd, the people at the character, like they like Castaway, but it really lit up when he called him Skinny Jeans. So just to let you know what's happening on my side of the states here. So
yeah, no, it was funny stuff, and the Castaway line got a good laugh from me, because I remember in the first movie, Mira is like, she's all about like going to war, and when he first kind of encounters her, he calls her Fight Club, which is kind of a funny like callback to it. In this movie is a different movie. So I like the pop culture stuff. Yeah, I think the comedy is, it doesn't hit every time, but I think they do a pretty good job of I think it does feel like it's more like a family movie, and obviously coming out around Christmas, which, the first movie came out almost 5 years to the day. In fact, one day off from being 5 years to the day. It kind of has like a family. I mean, a family is a big part of the film, obviously, because Aquaman is now a dad. Aquaman and Mira, the first movie was about their love story coming together, and now they have a child who they've named Arthur Jr., or just Junior for short. So the movie opens with Aquaman being a dad. It is interesting though, the way they play that part, because of all the Amber Heard stuff. There was, given what has happened with her and her career, and with her ex-husband Johnny Depp, and there was a lot of chatter that she wasn't going to be in the movie, as you mentioned before. And even if you watch the trailer for this film, if you blink, you miss her in the trailer. I mean, she is just in the trailer for like 2 seconds. And you're kind of wondering, what are they going to do with that character? Are they just going to kill her off? Is that the way to get around this? And in the beginning, they talk about how they have a child, and they show her with the baby a little bit, but they mostly show him with the baby, and they really try to portray like he's a single father. And he even talks to his dad about how his dad was a single father. So what did you think about that kind of like the parenthood aspect of the movie?
So I told you didn't watch any social media because I just wanted to see the movie for what it was and not get influenced. I saw a couple of the trailers, but I even stopped watching it. I don't even remember Mira being in the one or two trailers I saw. She did, like you said, maybe I blinked or something.
Yeah.
But I had that feel that, I saw, I'm like, okay, so they do the story. I got married, we fell in love, I'm married, and then she disappears. Then he's raising his son. I'm like, okay, so now he's following the same way his dad raised him for a few minutes. And then, it comes full circle, but I definitely thought it was going to be the single father storyline for a bit there too. And without an explanation to what happened to Mira, which would have, I think, tanked the movie. So I'm glad they did what they did. I mean, they lead you down that path, but they don't leave a void. They fill that void quickly and then bring it back, I guess, where it needed to be for the storyline.
Yeah, early in the movie, Black Manta. Okay, we're spoiling the movie, so if you're watching this, obviously as always, we spoil stuff. So
yeah, and the warning did come. Yeah. There it is again.
Right. So be warned. But early in the movie, Black Manta, he attacks Atlantis, and he's going for revenge. He wants to kill everyone. He says, like, I'm going to kill everyone in Aquaman's family. Going to kill him. Like, I'm going to get payback. Going to avenge his father's death. So when he attacks Atlantis, he actually does like the laser beams onto Mira, and she's burned very badly. Initially I was like, oh wow, they're going to kill her off in the first 20 minutes of the movie, and then they kind of like she goes to like a hospital, kind of underwater hospital, and it kind of writes her out of the movie for a little bit. However, she comes back and she's in a lot more of this movie than I expected, and I think a lot more than most people expected.
I was one of those people. I was like, wow.
And I think that like, okay, so I don't. Besides this movie, I don't know that I've seen Amber Heard in anything. I think this is the only movies I've seen her in are in Justice League, Zack Snyder's Justice League, and the two Aquaman films. And I'm not here to like critique her off-screen issues or even her acting, but I think she does play this character very well. And I think that, like, it to me, I'm glad they didn't punish the character for the actor's misdeeds or whatever, because I think it was to the point where they couldn't recast because they'd already shot the movie. And, I know Brittany, Brittany, who is a huge Johnny Depp fan, she is not happy with what I'm saying. But just hear me out. I have there's a rhyme to my reason, is what I'm trying to say. I do think that, I mean, from all reports, they did I think try to recast her, but they just could not make it work, and contractually they were kind of bound to have her in the film. So, and I think, they could have fired her, but it would have looked like it was like retaliation at that point. It didn't seem like the right thing to do. So, but her in this role, she's fine. Like, her character plays her part. And I think Aquaman needs to have Mira in the movie, whether it's Amber Heard or whether it's somebody else. I think Amber Heard fills this spot perfectly well. I didn't have a problem with her in the film. And I think, whenever there's a part when she returns to the movie after being kind of taken out in the beginning, when she returns and makes a save for him, she saves Aquaman. She's using her powers. She can manipulate, control water, and her eyes are glowing. And that shot is like straight out of the comics. I've been reading some Aquaman comics the last few weeks, and like that's taken from a comic from within the past 10 years. So I thought she was actually perfectly fine in the role. What are your thoughts on Amber Heard?
So real quick, and we talked about the consistency of the storyline, consistency of the cast. I was glad that the big names all came back. And again, I was surprised, but when she needed to show up and be Mira, she did a fine job. And you didn't have that feel that she didn't want to be there. She didn't, because some actors, when there's some weird goes on, you can kind of tell that, it's training even their performance. But she did what she did, and you get people typecast. I'm going to have a hard time, seeing anybody else as Aquaman. I think she's probably a Mira until I see a different or better Mira in what's happening with James Gunn taking over. But I agree with everything you said. I was surprised and not disappointed are my comments on her performance and how she and the role of Mira in this film. Again, I think in one of the battles, wasn't it Orm that called back about how Mira, she's always seeming to come in for the save. He made a funny comment to Aquaman about here. She saved you the first time from me.
Right.
Helped, so there's some good callback to that.
That was a great scene because, Aquaman's like, I kicked your ass in the first time we fought. And Orm's like, actually, Mira kind of got like, that's true. Yep. She did. Like, she obviously, Aquaman was like dead to rights basically that first fight with Orm. So yeah, honestly, I think she was like in the right amount of the film. It wasn't like overpowering, and I think
Correct.
for the people who don't want to see her, I don't think like she was in too much of the film, but she was in
I agree.
more than we were led to believe because
Absolutely.
the trailer is like literally she's in the one scene they showed in the trailer was the scene where when when Black Manta when he first attacks, she punches his like he's in that I don't know if it's like a submarine kind of deal,
Right.
and like she punches the glass. And that's the one thing you saw in the trailers, and that's it.
Okay.
So it's like literally a 2-second kind of clip. But yeah, no, she was fine. She did a good job. Clearly she won't be continuing this character. No one from this universe
Right.
will be continuing in these roles, or I should say, no one from this film at least. Um, but yeah, I know it was a big talking point going into the film, but it's kind of surprising she was in it as much as she was, but she did a fine job, and really, it's not a big deal. And it's really like the character. The character is more important than the person who portrays the character.
I
In,
agree.
in this sense, now in other senses, like yes, like Tony Stark, like Robert Downey Jr. is Tony Stark. That there are certain characters that are actors who define their characters. She didn't define Mira, but she did a good job, and so it's fine. It's over, and we're moving on. But it was a part of the movie that I think you had to address.
Agree. Agreed.
Um, going back to like the funny lines, a lot of it, like I said, the buddy comedy of it. You have Patrick Wilson playing off of Jason Momoa, and you know Aquaman's trying to convince Orm that the surface is better than the sea, and especially the food. He's telling him about eating greasy burgers and all this kind of stuff. And then they're on this island. They encounter this very big cockroach. Like I've not seen a cockroach that big, but pretty good sized cockroach. And he tells Aquaman tells Orm to eat the cockroach. He's like, yeah, they're the shrimp of the land or whatever.
Yep.
And it's pretty disgusting, but he bites into it. He actually enjoys it, which then points us to there's one mid credit scene in this movie. There's not a post credit. There's a mid credit, and it's just a payoff of the joke I was just talking about, where Orm, he's having a greasy burger at this place, and there's a cockroach on the table. He grabs the cockroach, smashes it in his burger, and then eats it. Gets that kind of crunch sounding. What'd you think about the whole cockroach of it all?
The one thing I did like is when they were talking about all the food, steaks, burgers,
Yeah.
and all that. He goes, "What are these words?" He says, like, doesn't even recognize what that was
Yeah.
a funny line, and that got a good chuckle too because he didn't understand words of the surface dwellers' foods. I thought it was interesting they picked a cockroach. I guess I'm not aware of people eating cockroaches for survival. I was used to locusts, so I kind of expected a locust versus a cockroach, but
Yeah.
I got the point. And then, of course, the one mid credit scene Jess and I both vouch as a spoiler. Don't sit around. There's nothing afterwards. It's just the mid credit. It was entertaining, and you could kind of see it coming. I was wondering where it went, but then when we came back to him with the beer, and the guy said, "Don't even," and then I saw the cockroach land. It's like, okay, it kind of set it up pretty easy, but it was entertaining at the point. And his facial expression. I mean, Patrick Wilson. I haven't seen a lot of other movies. I know he's in The Watchmen, but he plays a more serious role. To see a more lighter humor side of him was very interesting. So.
Yeah, he's in a lot of those movies with James Wan, or those like horror movies, like
Mhm.
the Annabelle and
Okay.
stuff that I haven't watched. But he's like in those kind of movies. So that's partially why he was in this film series, was because of his ties to the director.
Right.
So, but no, he was great. I think it was not because in the first movie he's mainly he's the main villain. In this one he becomes like it's very much like Loki. It's very much like kind of like Thor: Dark World. Honestly, this movie is very similar to that movie in a lot of ways. And that movie is not one of my favorite MCU movies, but the MCU and the DCU are definitely on different levels in my
I
mind.
was having Ragnarok feels, especially with the humor and the interaction, because between in the in that movie Ragnarok, there was so much more humor and interaction between Thor and Loki. Let's do the get help scene and stuff like that. I was waiting for them to do kind of a get help scene or something like that, but it was very entertaining. And again, two action pack actors that aren't really known for their comedic side. And again, especially Patrick Wilson, I thought he did a great job with a lot of that stuff, with facial expressions and with just maybe relaxing and letting someone, maybe I don't know, James one let them do a little more freestyling, but they seem to play off each other for the most part. Um, you did mention the comedy. I thought it hit almost every time. I thought it really, between the two of them at least, it was,
Mhm.
a lot of those comments were, I'd say Jason Momoa did a majority of them, but Patrick Wilson had his comebacks and his lines. So it made the whole movie more enjoyable. You know, keeping
Yeah.
having a good light laugh. So
Yeah, I think the movie definitely gets better whenever Orm enters the
mhm.
film. I think that was like breaking him out of prison. That was a good scene, and just really from then on, I think the movie's pretty solid. And then I thought the ending was pretty surprising. There were actually surprises in this film. Like I thought there was a couple times where it seemed like Orm was going to flip. He's kind of a good guy in this movie because he's
Mhm.
helping his brother. But there were a couple opportunities in the movie where it seemed like he was going to go bad again. There's a part where um, Dolph Lundgren's character, which is King, I think it's King Neris is the name of the character. Yeah, King Neris. He's also Mira's father. He's the king of Zebel, and he's like handing out weapons to his soldiers for this upcoming
Mhm.
battle. And he doesn't give Patrick Wilson's character, a weapon, or he gives him like an axe or like a little
Versus a laser rifle, right? Yeah.
right, because basically he's saying that, he doesn't trust him. And then there's a part later where King Neris gets attacked by, I believe, an octopus of some sort, of something with long tentacle
Yep.
legs gets a hold of him, and Orm looks like he's gonna let him just die. And then he, of course, makes the save, uses the little axe and chops off the tentacle and saves King Neris. So that was kind of surprising. But then later on in the film, when it's basically if you hold this black trident, you imbue this power of this King Norvax, this the Necros,
Mhm.
the king of Necros or whatever, and Orm gets a hold of it, and we find out that Orm's story is very similar to Necros's story, whereas or Norvax's story, because Norvax was the brother of Atlan, who is the original king of Atlantis, and he was banished to this lost kingdom for his for his misdeeds, and it's a very similar storyline to what happened with Orm and Arthur. So I thought it was cool they showed us that, but then there's also a part where Orm then becomes the villain for a brief moment before Arthur kind of snaps him out of it. So what did you think about those? Like, did you think that Orm was actually going to become a villain again? Because I mean, he is kind of in the comics. It's kind of
Mhm.
like either or. He's mostly villainous. So what did you think about that?
So the one thing I want to go about the comedy, I know when they're handing out the weapons and he gets the actor's laser rifle. I think the one guy that actually the actor is it John Rice Davis that voices Gimli in
Yeah,
Lord of the Rings,
John
but
Rhys
he actually
Davis.
says he doesn't like you very much. I like how he said that. That was some well placed comedic line when he gets the axe and he's the crustacean talking character's like, he doesn't like you very much. Um, and then to see him come back around and use the axe to cut the tentacle, I thought was a redemption scene. I was wondering at first there if it was going to be a turn on plot that he takes the Black Trident and then Aquaman turns to Black Manta at that point, who clearly lost his power and was going to maybe for there's probably a 15 to 30 second going thing watching that going, is this going to do a plot twist turn? But then he stuck with trying to talk his brother down and all that. So, but
Yeah.
for I'd say for a solid 15 seconds, I was watching that as I saw the green eyes and the green powers leave Black Manta, and he's not letting go of the trident. I'm like, oh, is this going to be a plot twist, turn kind of thing? But then it wasn't. So, but I saw the possibility being there. You were wondering too, especially that look. Patrick Wilson can do some great facial expressions when he disappears. Why Dolph Lundgren's character is hanging there. It's kind of like, is this is if this is a prelude to what might happen down the road when they get the
Yeah.
Black Trident. So I agree with you. There was some good allusion to what could possibly happen and where Orm's personality, for lack of a better term, can stand. Where he's Orm's about Orm for the most part, unless
Exactly.
until Aquaman can talk him about doing things for the greater good of everybody. So
Yeah. Yeah, they definitely played with your emotions a little bit. Like, it wasn't like it's
mhm,
cut and dry. I like that.
mhm,
I like that. It was kinda like, oh, it could have gone either way, and I could
correct.
see it either way. So I thought that was kinda cool, well done. Just wanna say, Yesenia's joined us in the chat. Good to see her. She's one of our regulars, so thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. We are talking about Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. So, if you have any thoughts or questions, let us know in the chat. Um, moving on, let's see. what did you think about the way, I guess, Black Manta died? Right, we're kind of meant to believe he chose death over the help of Aquaman because, like I said in the first film, Manta is trying to get Aquaman to help his dad because his dad, they're in the submarine, it's sinking. Something really heavy falls on Manta's dad, and only Arthur Curry could lift that off of him. And Black Manta's like pleading with Aquaman to make the save, but Aquaman's like, you've messed with the sea and you got what you deserve, and he let him die. Then in this film, after what transpires with Aquaman having to defeat the king of Necros, and once Manta is free of that evil power, I mean, he's still Black Manta, he still hates Aquaman. He's like hanging off a ledge, and Aquaman offers him his hand, and Black Manta is like, nope, I'd rather die. And he just falls. Like, I thought that was a very like strong moment for that character to be like, you know what, like, I'd rather die than have you help me.
Did you notice it hung there for about 10, 15 seconds with the music
Yeah.
too? And I honestly thought he was going to reach up and then go grab his forearm, do the brother forearm and pull him up.
Yeah.
That's what I kind of expected, just because everything was becoming the happy ending, or the positive ending. When he did that though, I guess it reinforced his character and how much he just has hate for Aquaman for not rescuing his father, and why this whole thing started. And unlike other things like we talked about the end of The Mandalorian, I don't think he survived that, because you see his body snap against the rocks when he's fallen. So I think there's no, and obviously with all sorts of things, they put an end to that storyline quick in that. So I don't think these he might come back in a different form, or obviously when James Gunn's running the DCU, but I thought it was initially surprising, but then at the end, it did tie up that storyline that nope, I'm just not a fan of Aquaman, and I'd rather die than have anything to do with him or be saved by him. So
yeah, I feel like if what happened in this movie was a comic, then Manta would definitely pop up later on, because the characters continue forever. That's just how it is.
Right.
But you're right. In the movie, I think we're definitely meant to believe he died because of the situation they were in. Like, how is he going to survive? Yes, he has a power suit, but it's kind of damaged, and he doesn't have the power of the Black Trident anymore. So, yeah, R.I.P. to Manta. I thought Yahya Abdul-Mateen the second was great. I think he was great in this character in both films. I mean, the first film he wasn't in the film a whole lot. This film he's definitely featured way more, and he is going to continue in the superhero realm. He's going to play Wonder Man for Marvel. So,
wow,
yeah. It's going to be a Disney Plus series. So we will see him again. Of course, he was also in the Watchmen HBO series from a few years back. So he played I'm not going to spoil it. He plays a very prominent character in that show as well. So we will see him again. Unfortunately, this is his end in the DCEU. Of course, it's everyone's end because it's the final movie. So, and speaking of endings, Drew, what'd you think about how Arthur and Mira just said, like, to Orm, they're, instead of like, basically the premise was we need Orm to help us out, and after he's fulfilled his duty, we're going to send him back to this prison so he can pay for his crimes from the first movie. But after all that transpires in this movie, they decide to, you know what, like, you're good, we'll let you go. In fact, we'll just tell everybody you died, and we didn't find the body in this icy waters. What did you think about that ending for Orm to allow him to just go on about his way?
I thought it was an appropriate ending. I mean, he did so much. When you save the Earth and save our planet, I think it doesn't serve. It wouldn't be true justice.
Yeah.
I was honestly surprised, because as much as Aquaman complained about the non-fun stuff of being the king, I almost kind of thought he was gonna just turn that back over to Orm and then go on being Aquaman. But again, since it's not progressing with what's going on with the DCU and under James Gunn, I kind of figured he was going to turn that over and then just be part of the Justice League. But again, the way it did, I thought it was, and then this storyline, I thought it was an appropriate ending, and it was, a nice, and there was some humor in the ending too about, they're all got on the same page. Yeah, you'd be hard to find a body amongst all these chunks of ice. So I liked it, and he'll unlike Loki, he was not dead. So he's, if the storyline continued, he was out there and probably could be called upon to help again. So,
yeah, I think it's, like, people wanted Mira to be killed off because of the Amber Heard stuff. And I think, like, to me, it's really tough when you kill off characters because, who knows if this movie did really, really well, they could have us, continue this franchise, because even with DC, they do have an Elseworlds kind of label that, in theory, if Aquaman 2 is a massive success, they could bring everyone back. Now, that's not going to be a reality, we don't think, but in theory, you could. So it's good that they didn't kill off every character. But I think Manta, obviously, his death seemed pretty apparent from what we saw. Speaking of other parts of the ending, so toward the end so one of the big parts of the movie was the fact that and Drew, I want to get your thoughts on this, the global warming aspect of the film, right? And this is a big part of what Jason Momoa contributed to this script.
Okay.
He wanted to make that like, hey, we have this crisis that we're facing as a world, and so he wanted to include that in the film. And in the film, we have this. There's this substance. It's like a substitute for oil. It's called orcalum, I believe is what it's called. Anyway, it's this green glowing power that is found in the Lost Kingdom, and it's basically heating up the earth, right? Which I think the timing of this movie coming out right now is pretty appropriate because, especially around in the U.S., pretty warm, and here we are in December, and even like you're in Wisconsin, and
Yep.
What
52 degrees today and no snow,
wow.
So it's crazy.
And I'm in Houston, it's like 70 degrees, and I mean we don't hardly ever have snow anyway, but
Right.
very very warm for December 22nd. But what you think about the overtones or of the not that it was like mentioned a ton, but we definitely got to talk about, it was definitely a part of the movie was global warming and the impact of like how basically humans are destroying the earth. And that's kind of the premise of many of the the Atlanteans. That's kind of their thought on the
Surface
characters
dwellers,
regardless.
right.
Yeah. That's their thought on the surface dwellers, like throughout the comics forever. So it's not necessarily a new thing, but it was a part of this story.
And as I was watching that yesterday, I was thinking of things we'd be talking about today. And I know as we were prepping to go live, I mentioned that to you. I said, boy, there was a huge environmental, save the planet theme to it. And I didn't realize, again, I didn't do any social media stuff because I wanted to stay away. I like to do that to not be influenced. But the fact that if that's what Jason Momoa brought, that's very interesting. Right or wrong, science proves, when we were all trapped in our houses just a short 3.5 years ago and not driving everywhere, you could see the pictures of the earth within weeks clearing up. And I think about even back to Endgame when half of the population's gone. They talk about whales in the Hudson. I mean, there was definitely some stuff that we need to be aware. And you talk about weather swings, in the last couple of years, we've had a year ago at this time, it was 0 and we had 18 inches of snow to what this is. So I think we just, using the platforms of entertainment to make people aware that, things are going on in our environment. I know, there's a political and there's a science stand too, but, I don't think at times we're helping our environment with what some of the things we're doing. So
Yeah.
I think there's just so I think some of these people use the entertainment platform just to keep social consciousness and social awareness. I thought it was interesting though. I mean, they accelerate a lot of things. So they didn't just, they tied in the story though too, because they were frozen in ice, and because they were trying to heat up the planet originally with this column stuff, and and that was going to change the species of the planet. And they showed a prelude to that and some of the visions, the people that grabbed the Black Trident were seeing, and even in the storyline that Orm shared about the Seventh and Lost Kingdom, I thought it was interesting though that that volcano sure was a one picture image of polluting the atmosphere of one volcano can actually have so much effect for months after its explosion, and the fact that it was there. But I mentioned it, I thought that was an interesting part, and there's no way of not picking up on that from this movie. That was like, wow, that I made a note of that. Within the first 15 minutes of the movie, you could see that this was going to become a theme. So
yeah, no, you're totally right, and I think they made it work pretty well with the storyline for the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot to it, but for a superhero movie to like tackle global warming, I think they made a nice attempt. It was a good, you're right. It's nice to like let people know, like, hey, this is actually happening in our world. But I mean, in the film, it does kind of make sense to what's going on with the plot of the story. So I think it worked out pretty well. Um, we have a question from Yesenia in the chat about CGI post Avatar. Now, admittedly, I've not seen either Avatar movie. Drew, have you seen the Avatar films?
I saw the first one. I have not seen the second one
The
yet.
first one. Okay, so I know the CGI is being critiqued quite all. I mean, all these movies, they always are. And I will say, just from my point of view, I don't think this movie looks as good visually as the first one did. Now, I from what I've heard and what I've kind of briefly seen on my own, I think people widely regard the Avatar movies as looking fantastic. In fact, I think they look so good that doesn't even matter. The story is kind of pedestrian, that's what I've heard about those movies. That the story is just kind of whatever, but it looks so cool that you're like in this underwater world, right? But to me, this one doesn't look as good as the previous one. But to me, all of these movies, all the recent superhero movies from the last 2 or 3 years, none of them look as good as the ones that were made 5, 6, 7 years ago. And I think that's simply because they make so many of them. And obviously we've had a pandemic that obviously, affected the scheduling, and it created a time crunch for a lot of this stuff. But I don't think they spend enough time in these movies. And that's why they don't look as good as they did, say, in the, late 2010s or early 2010s. Drew, what did you think about the way the movie looked visually and the CGI of all of it?
I think they were trying to do so much with what this that compound, whatever it was called, was doing. That, I mean, the jungle scenes were it definitely was not Avatar quality from the movie Avatars. But I mean, I don't know how else they could do it. It wasn't so bad that, you've seen some bad CGI. It wasn't bad CGI, but it was not great or fantastic CGI. So I agree.
Yeah.
I agree with you on that. So.
Yeah, Yesenia in the chat mentions there's a lot of standing, a lot of beard, hair wave, and I think some of that, it's kind of cool that they really show that hey, a person like Jason Momoa has long hair, or Nicole Kidman when she's in the movie, she's not in the movie very much, but when she obviously has a lot of long hair, and so does Mira, and so I think it's kind of cool that they show the movement of the hair, but it does look kind of wonky sometimes on Jason Momoa because obviously you see him the most. The one scene that I did think the CGI looked kind of bad was the first time when Orm and Arthur are in that ship after they've escaped from the prison area, from the prison planet or whatever, the prison kingdom.
When they go to the Pirate Kingdom?
Yeah. When they're in that ship and there's just the two of them, it looks.
I agree with you there.
I mean, that looked like just two dudes in front of a green screen, and it was not great. I mean, I'm talking about everything looked pretty bad. There's probably some people on YouTube that could recreate that and maybe do a better job at their home. That part of it I thought was pretty rough. But all the animal, when they're showing the dolphins or the shark or the killer whales, all that stuff looks pretty good to me. Again, not as good as it maybe did in the first one, but I think that's just because of the time commitment to the movie.
I agree with you on that. I mean, I thought they had too many orcas and whales in that one scene. I was like, did you really need that many? That's kind of overpopulous. And
How many
because
are there?
Of there so many, exactly. I was like, wow, that just seemed a little overkill. But I agree with you on that one scene. I was like watching that, going, that's looking a little, less than par. But then it was, and then they flipped to the other stuff going on with the pirate kingdom or area of the pirates. So
yeah. Another scene where the CGI looks kind of strange is one of the final scenes of the movie when Aquaman, he's long said he believes hey, the only way the planet's going to survive is if the surface and the sea can come together. So we need to Atlantis needs to reveal itself to the world, and then we can use our technology to help the world, and that the surface dwellers can use their technology to help us, and vice versa. So the very end of the film, he's doing a press conference behind a podium, and it looks
horrible.
Looked bad. Yeah. He's in his suit. Now, to me, in that green, that orange and green suit, it looks pretty good. I think that suit looks great. Like, it looks like almost like chain metal or something.
Mhm.
I don't know. The suit looks good. No, nothing against the suit, but the background, like he's like behind, like in front of this body of water at a podium, looks super fake. And then he says something that's like very much a ripoff of Tony Stark at the end of Iron Man, where he says, like, I am Aquaman, which I thought was like, it definitely was like trying to parody the MCU, but to me, like, I had a lot of questions. I'm like, is the MCU like a movie franchise in the DCEU, or I just, I mean, obviously they're winking at the audience, but it was just kind of like him saying, I am Aquaman." It's like, well, yeah, we know you're dressed as Aquaman. Like in Iron Man, Tony Stark was Tony
Yeah,
Stark dressed as the businessman, philanthropist,
right.
playboy, whatever,
Yep.
and he tells the world he's Iron Man. If he showed up in the Iron Man suit and goes, "Oh, by the way, I'm Iron Man," everyone's like, "Yeah, we can see you're wearing the suit." Like, just kind of a strange ending for the
Yeah,
film. What?
and the fact that he's not with a helmet and a mask too. It's like Aquaman is no. It's not like even a pair. I still always laugh for. I know you're, and I know you're a Superman fan. I have nothing against Superman, but just the fact that a pair of glasses can make
Yeah,
someone look and not. Versus the I loved how they did it in the dark. You and I are huge Nolan fan
yeah,
of the Dark Knight, but the Bruce Wayne and who's behind the mask of Batman. It's a known fact. I even think from the first one that they talk about the Aquaman. So
yeah,
it was just something funny. I mean, just this was it. So maybe going out, they just tried to do something
yeah.
a little humorous. So
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I think they're just like, "Hey, this is it. Let's just like let's have a funny
mhm.
moment." But for someone who's like really into these movies, I'm just like, that's kind of weird that you would like.
It just was
I
odd,
mean,
but
the first MCU movie kicked off with that line, and then now the final DCEU movie ends
and
with that line, but it doesn't really make sense for the DCEU. Whereas, like for the MCU, it was like perfect. So um, maybe that's kind of a correlation between like what has happened with those universes over the last 10, 15 years. But very, very strange ending. Um, so anyway, you know, pretty much every character from the first movie returned except for one. One notable character who was not in this movie was Volko, played by Willem Dafoe. Apparently, he did not return due to scheduling conflicts. And Drew, I want to get your thoughts on this. It seemed like in the movie there's a part where Aquaman's talking to his father,
right.
played by Temuera Morrison, and they make it sound like Volko died.
Yeah, I heard, and I don't, and I went back to, and so I saw the first one. I'm
Yeah,
like, nothing. There was, you said you remember what happened to Volko kind of thing, and Volko was there at the end of the first Aquaman. So I
yeah,
thought it was, I guess I was they're trying to address it, and they went quick because,
yeah.
so
Yeah, all Arthur says is, "Yeah, and he mentions Volko, and he's like, "Yeah, I miss him all the time," and it's like, but he doesn't really say that he's dead. But then it's like, well, where is he? It's like I I think they kind of wanted it to be like ambiguous, but then it's like I think he's dead.
yeah. Well, they didn't even finish it with something. I miss him, and then it wasn't his father. Tim Morrison's like, well, you know I can understand, especially after what happened to Volko or something. So they alluded to something, but we don't know what that something
Right,
is. So.
right.
And they kind of do it, I think, just to mention his name quick, give him some quick props, but then move on because they need to keep the story going. So
Yeah, yeah. No, I get it. I get the point that you want to explain it, but like I don't know. Like I think you need to either you need to like explain like, oh, well, he's managing this other kingdom, or he's like
yep,
I've sent him somewhere else,
right.
or
I agree with you.
yes, he died in this battle.
He had a
That's
huge role in the first
yeah,
movie, and William
right.
Dafoe I think a solid actor, and he's honest.
Yeah.
He's just from down the road south of Green Bay in Appleton. He's
Oh
from
wow.
our area from here, and so he's some local claim to fame, along with Tony Shalhoub, who's from from Green Bay too, his monk, which is hilarious. So
Very cool. Yeah. Who knew like that
yeah,
the route to Hollywood goes through Wisconsin up there.
so
So
for some people, yeah.
yeah, for some people, yeah, very cool. Yeah, I just noticed that because it was like, wow, I wasn't sure if they were going to reference it. I knew he wasn't going to be in the movie, but again, it was kind of a strange, like, oh,
Mhm.
well, he's dead, but we didn't see it. And um, from what I understand, the movie is set a few years after the first film. So, in real world, it's 5 years after the first movie came out, which, for a hit movie is a long time to do the sequel. But given the problems the DCU's had internally, and also the fact the pandemic is within those 5 years, I can see why this movie, took 5 years to come out. But in a perfect world, if you have a movie that makes $1 billion, you would greenlight the sequel and it would be out in 2 years. Like, it would have been 2020. We would have had, Christmas 2020 would have been Aquaman 2.
I expected 2021, to be honest with you, because I even know with Black Widow, when we talked about that in that summer of 2021, and they finally got Black Widow, which we liked. You and I both liked the movie, and it fit in, and it was a good movie. But I expected this movie in 2021. So I thought they could have done. I mean, I know they had issues and everything that transpired and all that. And I'm not sure how the trial with Johnny Depp and Amber Heard held this up at all either, with timing of her not being able to be on the scene. So that could have had something to do with it. I wasn't quite aware. I didn't read all the story of how it might have affected the filming of this, or not being able to be there for shooting scenes. But
yeah, well, the movie was filmed. It was filmed in I think I have that information. Let's see. Yeah, so the filming began in June of 2021.
Okay, June of 2021.
And it concluded in January 2022.
Okay.
But then they had some reshoots that I don't have the information for that happened after that. Now, the movie was supposed to originally come out in 2022, and it moved around a couple of times. And because of, like, during those movements, the DCEU also kind of went through some changes, because originally Michael Keaton's Batman was going to appear in this movie. Because this movie was like, originally, years ago, it was supposed to follow the Flash. And so Michael Keaton's Batman, who was introduced in the Flash that we saw, was going to continue on as the DCEU Batman in kind of a Nick Fury kind of role, right? And so he was going to play Batman. He filmed a scene with Jason Momoa for this movie, but then they moved around the movies, and they actually had Aquaman coming out ahead of the Flash. So they're like, well, we can't have Michael Keaton in that movie because it won't make sense, because we have to introduce him in the Flash. So they brought Ben Affleck back. Ben Affleck shot a scene as Bruce Wayne with Jason Momoa to, like, cover up for this scene they shot with Michael Keaton. Well, then they moved the movies again. I
had no idea about this. Wow, that's crazy.
They moved the movies again, where now Aquaman is once again coming on out after the Flash. And since, they had announced that James Gunn and Peter Safran were coming in to reboot the universe in 2025 anyway, they're like, well, let's just cut out either reference to Batman, and just kind of like, this will be the final movie of the DCEU. So
that's some serious lost money, especially bringing someone like, I don't know, Michael Keaton's asking prices these days, but I mean, Ben Affleck is no cheap.
Well, with Michael Keaton, that's one of 3 appearances that we won't get to see that he filmed. He filmed a scene with Aquaman that we'll never see, probably. He filmed an entire movie with Batgirl that we'll never see. Like, it's so crazy. So the fact that they brought him back is, like, one of the greatest achievements of the DCEU to me personally, and that's a super cool thing.
Yeah, I agree.
But then you had him film 2 other movies, and then we're never going to see the light of day. That blows my mind. Like, I just can't imagine that. Yeah, Brittany put it in the chat, the disrespect shown to Michael Keaton.
Yes.
And really, the disrespect shown to a lot of fans. But was honestly going to this movie on I go to see my movies. When I go to the movies, I go to Regal Theaters. And on the Regal app, on the description for the movie, the second billed actor is Ben Affleck. So they were going off an older, description for the film. And I was like, I don't think he's in this movie, but it'd be cool if he were. Of course, he's not in the movie. So there's no Batman. There's no references to any other Justice League or DC characters in this movie either. Did you notice anything?
I know none whatsoever, and there wasn't in the first one either. And I always question the timing of the first one, because they sort of introduced Aquaman in the Justice League. I kind of thought it would have been better to release the Aquaman movie, then do the Justice League. They did it in a fine manner. Zack Snyder had it under control, but I just thought with they skimmed over some details, and he's there, and then they have this big full blown movie about him. I thought that should have gone then. And I'm trying to think where the timing was, because was Wonder Woman before or after the Justice League? No, she had already shown up in Dawn of Justice, so we were aware of her presence. So
yeah, she appeared in BBS, Dawn of Justice, but then you're right. So Aquaman was introduced. I mean, Aquaman was technically in BVS also. You see him on this, like, he's introduced. It's like this, like Lex Luthor has the video
the
files
video clips.
of
You're right.
Aquaman.
Yep.
So you see him there, but
Right.
his first actual film was Justice League.
Right.
And in that movie, Mira is in the movie, but she has an English accent, which they ditched that in Aquaman. But you're right. In the first Aquaman movie, they Mira actually references that you defeated Steppenwolf talking to Aquaman. So like that's the only reference that they ever make to the Justice League or the DCEU is the fact that Aquaman helped take down Steppenwolf. And Drew, speaking of Steppenwolf, we both noticed in this movie the song "Born to Be Wild" that everyone's heard, whether you've heard this song in its entirety or just on commercials and other movies throughout the years, was very prominent in this movie, especially for the motorcycle scenes where Jason Momoa is like driving his own personal motorcycles in the movie. What did you think about "Born to Be Wild" and the fact that it's by the band Steppenwolf?
I mentioned that too. I just thought it was ironic. I mean, it fit the scenes and it fits Jason Momoa's love of motorcycles, dirt bikes, and all that. I just always chuckle because I don't know all of the DC comics as well as I know the Marvel. So I wasn't sure about Steppenwolf from when I saw Justice League, but then it was interesting. Those are hilarious comments. Yeah, I mentioned to you too. I just thought it was funny. I was like, hey, there's some Steppenwolf, and they fought Steppenwolf in the Justice League now 6 years ago. So just a humorous kind of thing. Fans like us or super fans like us notice.
Yeah, you wonder if that's like an Easter egg or if it's just like, hey, like
pure coincidence.
we want to use this song, and they just total coincidence that they happen to be the band that sings the song, and to me it's a song that's overused. Like it's not that I don't like the song. The song's fine, but it's just like it's so I bet it's been like in 20 commercials in my lifetime. You know what I mean? It's been so many commercials, it's been so many movies. It's just like, wow, like you're really like this is find something new in my mind. Or find something like that you don't hear all the time.
Real quick about songs and characters. If I recall the Terminator from 1990 or 1991 when he comes out, isn't it Too Bad to the Bone?
I think it is.
That was like one of the, you talk about movies and scenes that were perfect. That's always one that's always looking at me like they nailed that one. Sorry to really go off on
that's tangent, a good point.
But the thing is just that one was hilarious. I love that. So
yeah, but see, you're right. That one fits the movie to me better than. I mean, I guess the song actually kind of fits the Arthur Curry character pretty well, but it's just it's an overused song for movies and commercials.
Real quick, and something that we both love is the MCU is the use of AC/DC in the Iron Man movies, especially with Shoot to Thrill. When he's doing his stuff with the suit and all that. That's they've done some good stuff with that. So yeah, I know I can't disagree with you. We both are on the same page. It isn't overused, but it was just neat to see in the fact that they fought a villain named Steppenwolf. It was entertaining, extra entertainment.
Yeah, and we also learned in this movie, if we didn't know before, that Aquaman / Arthur Curry / Jason Momoa really likes Guinness beer. There's a lot of Guinness in this movie. Drew, what'd you think about that?
I don't know much about him personally. I guess he must and the fact that they got some, obviously they paid to get it, but yeah, they definitely like their Guinness beer.
Right.
So
yeah, to the point where early in the movie with their, they got the baby, they open the refrigerator. All they have in the refrigerator is baby milk and Guinness beer. That's it. Yeah. Something else about this film that I want to touch on briefly was the fact that in the comics and even in the DC movies, there's always like this joke that Aquaman can talk to fish. Now in the comic books, they explain it like, Aquaman is very annoyed by this, and even in some of the DCU stuff, he's annoyed by it because it's not so much that he talks to them, but he can communicate with them like telepathically.
Right.
Now in this movie, we see that Junior, the baby, can also do the same thing. But then we see Aquaman talking about it later, and like he basically just kind of gives in like, yeah, I can talk to fish. And I was like, that was kind of a weird, like, I thought he was like so against like that being a thing because he was always like so offended. Like if you watch Peacemaker, Jason Momoa has the cameo about, it's more than talking to fish.
Yes.
But, the cameo is basically along the same lines. And he's so offended by the assertion that he can talk to fish or do other things with fish. And I don't know. I thought it was just kind of strange. He's just like, yeah, I can talk to fish. He just like admits
I thought it was for the humor. Sorry to cut you off there. I thought for the humor aspect where he's saying these things. And he goes, like, I talk to fish because we know how much he hates that. The fact that he concedes it, but the way he says it with that bit of sarcasm, I just it was entertaining. It was funny, entertaining. So I think that's what I got out of that. But I did notice that too. So I thought it was interesting that they had Junior start talking to fish right away like that.
Yeah,
too.
right away.
And they also, what was neat in the movie is when Junior calls out to his dad via telepathically because the kid can't speak. And I was like, okay, that was cool. They did that. I don't know enough about the comics, and I don't know if he has a son in the comics. I have some team ups with him in Green Arrow and stuff. But yeah, that's neat that they did that, and he was able to bring his dad in to help and save him. So.
Yeah, no, he does have a son in the comic. Okay. Yeah, it has a couple different children, but the one we see in this film, Arthur Jr. in there is a comic book or a comic storyline where Black Manta does kill the baby. And so in this movie, the baby is put in jeopardy, which was kind of shown in the trailers for this film. And I was really interested, like, are they going to like kill the baby? Because again, it's kind of like the surprising stuff with how Black Manta dies and also with whether Orm is going to be a good guy or bad guy in the end. To me, they did a good job of like keeping me in suspense because I honestly thought like they might kill the baby. Like, who knows? Like, in the Flash, they put babies in microwaves. So like the DCU,
we talked about that.
Yeah, we did. And a lot of people did not like that scene, but did you think the baby might die? Because I thought maybe so.
With the rating of the movie, I don't know the storyline like you did, so I didn't go into having any known or any premonitions. I didn't think so. It's too much of we're going to end this on a positive note and the good guys are going to win. So I didn't foresee that coming. I thought I was going to get really close. Yeah. I thought he might have cut the baby, and that was going to be a little disturbing. I wasn't sure, and then he actually hits him and causes, in the face to cause the blood. But I kind of thought that's what was going to happen. He was going to at least, maybe start cutting the baby, and then that was going to do it and release the king. I was like, oh boy, but then I looked at the rating. I'm like, that's pretty dark for what this is rated. So, and they shadow the baby away too when he has the knife. So I was like, okay. And then that ended quick because that's when you see the telepathy happen. And so that's when I thought, okay, that's a neat way of how that's going to work out. So.
Yeah, you're right. He could have just cut the baby because in the storyline, all they need is the blood of the bloodline, the royal line, whether it be from Arthur, from Atlanta, which is Nicole Kidman's character, Orm, or now Arthur Jr. Right. So, originally the way this movie was portrayed in the trailer, it seemed like the baby might die, and it seemed like the baby and or Mirror were going to die early in the film. That's why going in, I was like, if they're going to kill one of them, they might kill both of them. They might kill them very soon. But I think the way the movie played out, killing the baby would have been a bummer, especially like around Christmas. Like, what are you doing? That's a bummer anyway. But like,
DCU's made some screw ups, so I don't think it's screwed that bad. I agree with you there.
But I thought going into the film, I was like, I wouldn't be surprised if they did that because they did that in the comic books. So it also would kind of, set Aquaman on this like path for revenge. Similar. Black Manta is also on a path for revenge, also. But yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of interesting aspects to this film, honestly. Like, I think I think I enjoyed it about as much as I expected to, which is to say, it's fine. It's I don't know that I'll see it again in the theaters, but once it's on Max or DVD, I'll probably check it out again. What are your kind of final thoughts on the movie?
You stole my words. I enjoyed it as much as I thought I was going to. It was a good wrap up. And again, I love the consistency of the storyline. It's just when as we do what's going to happen with the characters and stuff, I think they did a great job of just putting finale to it. So it's kind of like, how are you going to carry this through? But they did a good job of making an entertaining story in about 2 hours. Maybe it's the times, maybe like you said, some people are having superhero fatigue, which I think is sad because we grew up waiting for such things like these to be put on the big screen. But
I know.
And once we don't have some, we're going to miss them, and then they'll come back and just kick butt, whoever does it. And obviously, I think James Gunn's going to reboot it, and that's going to be, when everything you have somebody new that's come from a successful franchise with the Guardians and everything he did, Marvel and some of that other stuff, and even with the Peacemaker in his first steps into this universe, we'll appreciate that. But I didn't feel like I wasted any time seeing it. I'm not sure I'm going to go to a theater and see it again, but definitely I have Max. I'll watch it again when it's available.
Yeah.
So It's a
Yeah,
good fun movie, and the cast really makes the movie, and they help, the storyline's decent, but the cast really helps and make the movie enjoyable.
yeah, and I really think that that's one thing. If you look like now that we're DCEU is over, now that this movie is out, that's the final film of the DCEU. Looking back, it went from 2013 to 2023, so 10-year run.
Hmm.
Um, one of the hallmarks of the DCEU, or one of my favorite aspects, was the casting. I do think the casting for all of these characters, the only one I can think of that I did not like the casting for is Lex Luthor. I think they made it work eventually, but even initially, I remember when that movie came out, I remember telling Brittany at the time, I was like, "Wow, I don't see this guy as being Lex Luthor. Like this is like I
Right.
just didn't." To me, it never made sense for Lex Luthor to look younger than Superman, but that just doesn't.
I agree. It
In
just
my
doesn't.
mind, it just doesn't
It never
work.
worked in the
Like,
comic series like that, so you get
yeah, it
things
just
stuck in your head from the roots of where it comes
yeah.
from. Yeah, I agree.
Even though like in the real world, like they're both kind of around the same age, or maybe Jesse Eisenberg is slightly older than Henry Cavill. I don't know, but like it just didn't work. But otherwise, like the casting for these movies have been spectacular. And I mean, Jason Momoa, look no further than him. He has, I mean, honestly, Jason Momoa and Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman, those are the two flagship characters from this DCU. It's not Batman or Superman who are the two flagship characters of DC, period.
Hmm.
Those two characters, they both appeared in 7 different DCEU projects over the years. So now some of them were just cameos, but they definitely got a lot of mileage out of those two characters. And so what do you think of, like, looking back at the DCEU, like what's just focus on casting. What were some of the casting things that you liked, or maybe some that you didn't like?
I still see Henry Cavill as Superman. I mean,
Mhm.
he's a strong third behind. I think Gal Gadot Wonder Woman is number one. Jason Momoa is Aquaman, but he is a strong third. I think Batman got floundered around, and I can't. Wasn't it one of the in the 2000s? Did Kevin Spacey play Lex Luthor in one of those movies or
He
something?
did in Superman Returns.
That's what it was. So, I mean, I thought he would make a fantastic Lex Luthor. The age differential between Superman and even if it was Henry Cavill, would be great. But um, yeah, it was good to see these put on the big screen, and I really did enjoy the Man of Steel. I thought it was a great origin story, and to show the human side of Clark Kent as he's trying to figure out these powers. I mean, and again, the casting: Kevin Costner, Diane Lane, right? I'm trying to think, played his mom.
Yep. Yep.
And then you have Amy Adams, Lawrence Fishburne. So there's people that I know there's money involved, but I think there's some fandom in these stars. We've always talked about these actors and actresses that show up in these things. So, I mean, I thought Man of Steel was a great movie, and I think Batman versus Superman um, tried to do what the original did. I mean, the thing they left out is the Arrow was going on the WB at the time. If they could have integrated a better Green Arrow into, or even have a good Green Arrow origin story, and they brought him in, I thought that would have made it better. I did like the series on television. I did like the actor that played him, but I agree with everything you say. Those casting parts were great. Is it Ezra Miller? I mean, he made a great Flash and was, from what I remember from the few Flash comics I have, Barry Allen was a little bit older and a little, for lack of a more mature in life. He didn't
Right.
seem,
Right.
so it was interesting. I think they're trying to appeal to a maybe a little bit younger generation. I'm not sure, but he was still a fun Flash. I didn't buy the Jesse Eisenberg. I mean, he played a good deceivious villain, but I didn't see Lex Luthor. I just saw a villain that was Lex Luthor-ish. I know he's supposed to be Lex Luthor,
Yeah.
but I agree with that. I'm trying to think, and obviously the first Wonder Woman, I thought that was, I did like Justice League, and I think it really tried to, do an Avengers thing for these movies and have that. I mean, it wasn't a bad story, and the special effects are cool, but I don't want to keep fumbling your words. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I don't have too many negatives. I agree with you on Lex Luthor, but I do like everybody else that played the part, except that Batman got floundered around. I think a bit much.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people really like Ben Affleck's casting because, I mean, not initially. Initially, people hated it, but once they saw him in the suit, he looked
Hmm.
like the most like comic accurate. He was definitely like the biggest, like bulkiest Batman, and I think I think he played a great Batman. The problem was is they never, like, the universe really wasn't like built to last. it wasn't like the MCU. If you watch the MCU now, and I've read a book about the MCU. I talked about it on our most recent episode. And the MCU didn't have everything plotted out. Like they didn't have like this master plan, but they did have a plan. And when things would change, they would figure out the best way to go with the change, and then just continue to build off that. The DCEU didn't like the thing is the DCEU was born out of the writer for the Dark Knight Rises, or the Dark Knight Rises. There's David S. Goyer, or maybe it's the Dark Knight writer. Anyway, he came up with the storyline for the Man of Steel and pitched it to Christopher Nolan, who then pitched it to Warner Brothers, and they originally wanted Christopher Nolan to do what he did with Batman with Superman, right? And so when they built this universe, they weren't building a universe. They were just trying to start a new Superman franchise. And right away, like Man of Steel, I've had a complicated relationship with that movie because I was dying to see it. I saw it. There are parts that really bothered me, disappointed. There's parts that still bother me. But over the years, I've come to kind of appreciate that movie. And I always loved the score from Hans Zimmer. I think the score is excellent. That's probably my favorite thing from the DCEU period is just that music. But they put out this movie. It did relatively well at the box office. However, at the same time, you had Marvel with Iron Man and the Avengers just rolling, just turning out billion-dollar movies. And the people at Warner Brothers decided instead of building up the Superman storyline, which might take several movies, and building up his universe, we're going to fast track. We're going to get to Justice League because we want to go head to head with Avengers and we want to get in on that Avengers money. And they didn't put in the work.
I agree.
The Marvel universe was built up through, Iron Man, Hulk, Iron Man 2, Captain America, Thor.
Yep.
Then you have an Avengers. Like they built it the right way. And, the second movie in the DCU, you went from introducing the world to Superman, right? And then the next movie, you're killing Superman and you're bringing Batman. Batman wants to kill Superman. And it's just like, what are you doing? You're the second movie, you're killing off, the most powerful character in your universe. And then the next movie, you're bringing him back, and then, the Justice League is a whole other kind of so much. We could do many podcasts just about the Justice League and the Zack Snyder stuff and what happened with that. And we talked about it in the past. They just never got on the right footing. And then they were like Yesenia said, they were always playing catch up, and they never could kind of figure it out. And then even the tone of the movies kind of wasn't consistent. You had this like dark Snyder kind of verse in the beginning, and then, then you have silly stuff, and then James Gunn brought his flavor to it, which I think a lot of people liked. I know I did. And it was kind of all over the place. And there's good stuff in there, but it never gelled together.
And I thank you every time you've brought me on as a guest podcast. I do appreciate it. And my comment is, in Kevin Feige we trust. Can only be one Kevin Feige, and he's kept anything Marvel great. I agree with that mathematical equation down there in the chat. But without a Kevin Feige, I think it's survived alongside of what it's had to, and for the most part, they've been very entertaining. And where they're falling short just shows that everything you said, why there's a lack of things, a lack of they're successful, but they're not MCU movies. But we still like, people do like the DC comics, so these movies have been good to see our comic book heroes put up on the big screen. So. The worst of them all was Green Lantern. I don't know if that's on our list. Obviously, that was probably the worst. Oh, didn't even? Yeah, so
no, because that was before the DC.
Okay, that was all right.
That's something else. The whole, there's so many things we could go with this. You're right. Green Lantern actually was kind of supposed to be the start of something, but because that movie flopped so hard, and looking back, I don't hate that movie. It's not very good, but
I don't hate it. But
it's not like the worst thing I've ever seen. But you're right. And then the thing is, like in the middle, you had a movie like Joker, which wasn't connected at all, did $1 billion, which was like a movie with a low budget that was a huge hit. They have another Batman, the Batman with Robert Pattinson, which did very well, and that's continuing in its own universe. So like they just never could kind of put it all together. And that's probably like the story for the DCEU. Is it like it had great promise, it had great potential, it just didn't totally deliver. And it's a bummer that like, you know, Henry Cavill didn't really get to play Superman. I mean, he was cast Superman. He was Superman for a little brief period of time, but he never really got to like really go the whole distance and like live through that character's like progressions and timeline and like, you know, kind of embody that character in a full way. So it's I don't know, it's yeah,
Yeah, you've seen it hit it on the head. I
yeah.
think the fact that you guys didn't have a draft, it explains it. So
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like part of why we didn't have a DCEU movie draft is like I think I'm the only person in our watchers group who's seen every movie. Now you, Drew, you've seen almost all of them. You've seen
I have
everyone but
seen them all
Blue Beetle. Yeah,
except Blue Beetle yet. I'm just
right.
waiting to catch up on
But
that. So
everyone else, I don't think maybe Frank has seen almost all of them. I think he's going to see Aquaman 2 this weekend. So, but yeah, that's part of it. Is that just didn't have the buy-in that the MCU gets. It just
Mhm.
and it's understandable. It just wasn't as successful, and there's lots of reasons for it. But you know, it's even still, I'm glad it existed, and I wish it would have done far better. And I'm looking forward to the new DCU, which is a much better name than DCEU. I'm looking forward to James Gunn. I'm looking forward to Superman Legacy. I'm looking forward to all that stuff. I just hope that people in a couple of years still care about superhero movies because right now people are pretty sick of them. Next year we're getting fewer than we have this year. However, there are two that I think people really enjoy. Deadpool 3 should be very fun. And we get the sequel to Joker. Joker Folie à
oh,
Deux, I think is how you say it. That's coming out next October. So there's two big ones coming out. Then there's also three Sony Spider-Man movies without Spider-Man. We have Madam Web, Kraven the Hunter, and Venom 3. So those movies probably won't fare too well. But I do wonder like what the future is for superhero movies because we've been in this like boom of superhero movies, and I think the bubble kind of burst this past year or so. And you know, Drew, you and I we're similar in age. Like, you know, growing up, like we didn't have these movies. Like we had
no.
the Superman in the 70s and early 80s. We had Batman in 89,
Yeah.
and then that's pretty much it until
It's
X-Men
funny.
and Spider-Man.
You
Yeah.
keep forgetting I'm exactly 10 years older than you. And
Yeah.
but yeah, I agree. But you grew up, I mean, you grew up we grew up just in the, I remember loving the Christopher Reeve movies. And when Batman
Yeah, we did.
89 came out and seeing that Batman, you talked about that, I think when we had the Flash thing, just seeing that original Batmobile in 89 and then the Batjet, that was some cool stuff. And you were hoping that as time went on and special effects and things went on, and obviously the Nolan brothers hit it on the head with their movies. I mean, those as standalone, whatever, those are fantastic superhero movies. And, the world is struggling to be a good place. And I think, we always need our superheroes. I think that's why comic books have lasted
Yeah.
this long. I mean, those of us that want to do good or make the world a better place are always going to be fans of superhero, whether it's comic or film. So I think they'll last. I think just what happened is it reached out to a general populace of, I've my cousin read Captain America, or I know who Captain America is, or Spider-Man, but then they saw those movies and they were just, I mean, whether you're a fan or not, like you look just 2 short years ago, No Way Home, what a movie that was, right? So,
Exactly.
and last year, I was a huge, besides No Way Home, I was a huge fan of Wakanda Forever. Just, the acting and the cast, and the storyline just gets, it's whether you're a fan or not, you become a fan because there's so much humanity to it. So,
Right.
and the thing about real quick is the thing about
Yeah.
Aquaman, a lot of us are parents, have kids, have family, have brothers, have siblings. So there's things that, yes, superheroes are superheroes, but it's the humanity part of it that we link to and like so much that after all said and done, there's a human factor to them all that we can relate to.
Yeah, and these movies, like I don't think they're all going away completely, but we're definitely going to get fewer of them. And maybe
Correct.
that's for the better, and maybe that'll make them better. Maybe if we have one or two a year and they're just both the movies are great every year, that'll. But the problem is, if that happens, what happens in life is if something's successful, what do you want more? You want more of it, and that's why I think now we've kind of reached that saturation point where we've all had enough. Or, I mean, honestly, I still like this stuff, so I'm probably like on the outside of this
Well,
equation, but
you and I
yeah,
probably are because
yeah,
we're super fans of superheroes,
right.
right? So
But I can understand why other people are just not into it, and I do get that in some respect. So yeah, back to the dark
Yep.
times. Hopefully not. Hopefully not.
Just remember,
Yeah.
history repeats itself, Yasina. So we have to go back
Yeah.
to the dark times to remember the new renaissances. So I agree. I was not aware of the new Joker. I've just been out of the loop a bit on that. I'll have
Yeah.
to do some research on that. But I was just thinking what's coming out with Marvel. And now that the shift and change of plans with everything that's gone down with Jonathan Majors too, not the platformers podcast up with that, but the storyline that's coming up with that. But that's still going to be some amazing stuff on the Marvel side. I did see that Kraven the Hunter and some of those others coming out too. I'm like, oh, they're going to make some movies out of they're going to make movies about bad guys, but are they really going to be bad guys? Like, because there's no Spider-Man to fight them. But it'll be interesting. And will I watch them? Yes, because I like them as the adversaries of Spider-Man. So will I see it? Probably.
Yeah, I'm going to see those movies, of course, and we'll probably talk about them here on the podcast. But yeah, you're right about the Sony stuff. It's like eventually these villains need to be villains, not anti-heroes, because so far they've all Morbius and the 2 Venom movies, they've been anti-heroes. And it's okay to do that every once in a while, but when your entire Sinister Six is like not so sinister, like it doesn't really it doesn't really work. So anyway, we'll see how that goes. I guess the last thing to put a button on the DCEU, I'm gonna provide my my final rankings. I say final, but I mean final for right now, because these could change, because these movies, they're, to me, a lot of them are kind of like, it's just how I feel that day. So I'm gonna go through my rankings for the DCEU. I'm gonna start at the bottom, number 16. And Drew, just whenever you want to jump in, let me know like your thoughts on the movie or like how you would rank them. So number 16, I have it's the Harley Quinn movie. It's called Birds of Prey: The Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn. This movie came out in 2021, and it was a rough watch from the first time. I've only seen this movie one time. I don't know that I'll ever watch this movie again. Actually, came out February 7th, 2020. So it came out right before the pandemic. Maybe that impacted the box office a little bit. It did not do super well. And it's not a fun movie to watch. I'll just leave it at that. My next is Suicide Squad, the first Suicide Squad movie from David Ayer, which actually did very well financially. It's one of the higher grossing movies in the DCEU. It made $749 million. That movie, it sounds like we may get like a Snyder Cut version of that movie someday, but the Ayer cut, the director who made the movie, was not happy with the final what the final product we saw, because apparently it's not his vision of the movie. Basically, the movie was kind of recut after the success of Deadpool and Guardians of the Galaxy. And they tried to make Suicide Squad more fun and entertaining as those movies, and it did not work. That is a disaster. My number 14 movie is a movie from this year. It is Shazam! Fury of the Gods, the sequel to Shazam. I loved the first movie. The second one, not so much. That's probably another one of these ones I don't know that I'm ever going to watch again. Number 13 is Black Adam. It was The Rock's introduction to the DCEU. He was going to change the hierarchy of power. It did not happen. Although at the time, I was excited about The Rock joining the DCEU, and I think his star power really could have helped. But the movie got caught up in the fact that it wasn't very successful, but also the character is not very well known. And the fact that they were also in the middle of changing who controlled, who had the reins of power at DC in the movie division. And so that movie kind of got undercut a little bit by that, I believe. So that's my number 13. My number 12 is the original Justice League, the 2017 version, which is referred to as the Justice League, because Joss Whedon was brought in to help finish the movie after Zack Snyder left following the tragic suicide of his daughter. This movie, over the years and after the Snyder Cut came out, this movie definitely fell in my mind. At the time, I thought it was okay, but it was definitely like a drugstore version of Avengers. It was not nearly as good as Avengers, definitely a knockoff version. Moving on to my number 11, Wonder Woman 1984. This movie came out on Christmas Day in 2020 in the height of the pandemic. It did not, it was in theaters, but most people watched it day and date on HBO Max, which
I did on Christmas. I remember that. And I enjoyed it that day.
I did too. I liked the movie. A lot of people hated this movie. I think this movie, had it come out in theaters without the pandemic, I think this movie would have made a lot of money. I think, some people still wouldn't have liked the movie as much, but it would have been a $600-700 million movie. So yeah, so I don't hate it as much as most people do. My number 10 is Aquaman, the first movie, the first Aquaman film. It was the most successful movie, as we mentioned before, in the DCEU. 1.1 billion. It was definitely a big hit. I enjoyed it, but I thought the sequel was slightly better, which we've just talked about. That's my number 9. My number 8 is Blue Beetle, which also came out this year. Blue Beetle is also not a well-known character, but really enjoyed how they portrayed the character. And this character actually will be continuing in the DCU with James Gunn. So so check out Blue Beetle. It's on Max right now, and it's a fun little 2-hour superhero movie. Enjoy that, and obviously that character is moving on, so that's cool. My number 7 is the probably the most famous movie of the DCEU, arguably the most famous. Maybe the Snyder Cut is up there with it, but number 7 is BVS, Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. This movie, like much of the world, I was very excited to see this movie. I mean, anytime you put Batman versus Superman in a title like of a movie, you're like, I'm there. I can't wait to see it. The movie, it's one of those movies where I have a complicated relationship with it. I think in a lot of ways it's super cool looking. The fight between the two is cool. There's a lot of stuff in the movie though that's just dumb. And of course the Martha scene, that's one of the most made fun of portions of the DCEU. Yeah, it's tough. Also, they kill Superman, spoiler at the end of it. That's again your second movie in your universe and you're killing Superman. Just what are you doing? It's yeah, but still, that movie will live forever though, because like the title itself, people are always going to be interested. Like, what is that? They're going to check it out. My number 6 is Man of Steel. We've talked about Man of Steel a little bit before. We did a whole podcast about it a few months back when we celebrated the 10-year anniversary of the movie. They casted the right guy to be Superman, Henry Cavill. I think he did a good job. Visually, Zack Snyder killed it. But like BVS, there are moments in the movie that I'm just like, that's crazy. Like, I can't believe we lost Jonathan Kent in a tornado, and Superman's right there, could save his dad. Like, of all the times when you can use your powers and no one would notice or care, is in the middle of a tornado. You could zoom in there, get him, save him, and whatever, like, and even if people see, who cares? Like, you've saved people before in the movie and see people saw you. The psychology of it just does not make sense. So that's my number 6. My number 5 is The Suicide Squad, James Gunn's version of the Suicide Squad that came out in 2021. It was also impacted by the pandemic. It did not do very well. In fact, it's one of the lowest grossing movies of the DCEU. I do think the pandemic affected it. Also, the fact that it was also, you could either watch it on HBO Max or in theaters. Most people like me, I watched it at home. And so, but I quite enjoyed it. My number 4 is the first, the first Wonder Woman. I almost said Aquaman. The first Wonder Woman movie, which I think might be the prohibitive favorite of everyone. If you ask the person on the street if they've seen these movies, which one was the best one, they're probably going to say Wonder Woman. I enjoyed it. I think it was well made, well done. I just think that, like, I think Captain America: First Avenger is a better story and a better version of this kind of the same story. So, Man at a Time, Captain America; Woman at a Time, Wonder Woman. Similar stuff, both good movies. I prefer First Avenger better more than the first Wonder Woman. My number 3 is Shazam, which I thought was, like I've said it a million times, to me it felt like an MCU movie trapped in the DCEU. The humor was great. It really bums me out what happened in the sequel, because I did not enjoy the sequel, but the first one was very strong. My number 2 is the Snyder Cut, Zack Snyder's Justice League. This movie is 4 hours long, and it does feel like it, but it was very cool that he got to bring his finished vision to our TV screens at least. And I'll never forget when it came out, watching it, and I've seen it very many times. And for a 4-hour movie, it's tough to watch a movie over and over and over, but I've seen it maybe 10 times now. I don't know. I really enjoy it. I think it's easily his best DCEU movie. And honestly, like, they should have started with Justice League. Like, if you're going to fast forward, why just start with Justice League? Like just start it off that way and then go from there. I don't know. Maybe that would have worked better. Who knows? My number one is very controversial to a lot of people, I believe, but not to me. It's The Flash. Came out this summer. One of the biggest flops in the history of movies, but I don't care. I like the movie a lot. I enjoy it. They brought back Michael Keaton in this film to play Batman, which I never thought was even possible. I really enjoyed the story. I really enjoyed how the movie, really tried to tie together the whole DCEU, how they went back to 2013, they went back to Man of Steel to tell the story. And yeah, I just really enjoy The Flash. It bums me out how most people don't like that movie. I don't really understand. I mean, there's lots of factors we talked about in the podcast about the episode, about the movie itself, but to me, I think the movie by itself stands on its own, and it's a good superhero movie. So that's my list. We want to know what you think about. Let us know in the comments below or in our chat right now if you want to. And Drew, let's get your thoughts. What are your rankings for the
Sure.
DCEU?
I'm glad you went first, and if Brittany wouldn't mind leaving that up. So I'm with the general populace, and right or wrong amongst you and I as friends. I mean, I still think Wonder Woman, the first Wonder Woman 2017 is still my number one. Aquaman's my number two, and The Flash is my number three. Shazam's my number four, and my number five is Man of Steel. And then when I get to the Justice League, I guess I needed to see the Josh Whedon version first before, but I like both versions, but without that first one, you don't appreciate the second long one. And I mean, the Snyder cut is definitely the better too, but that's where I rank on that. The Suicide Squad from 2021, because it led to the Peacemaker. And at the time I did like the cast. Yes, I did watch it on Max too, because I have it, but multiple watchings of that. And then after being the fan of the Peacemaker series and then going back and seeing the ties, I mean, I like that one better than the one from 2016. I just thought it was interesting that they were able to keep Harley Quinn, the one consistent cast member between the two. I thought that was neat. She did that. Wonder Woman 1984 is number 8. Batman versus Superman is number 9. Number 10 is Black Adam, and the rest are a mix of I really don't care, to be honest with you. I mean, I saw the last ones I didn't mention once, and I haven't seen them again. I really had a lot of hope for Black Adam. It started out strong and kind of got weak, but seemed to end strong, especially with Henry Cavill, but then everything went down. But those are my top 10 of the 15. And again, we're talking about the movies, but where Peacemaker stands is just, that thing is just, that is a sign of hope for what could be coming, what James Gunn going to be doing for this universe.
That's a great point, Drew, because again, we're ranking the films right now,
right.
But if you include Peacemaker, I think it's number one. I think it's the best thing from the DCEU. And I mean, when the DC, 2 years ago or 3 years ago, if you said, "Hey, what is Peacemaker?" I would not have known. I'm like, I think George Clooney made a movie in the 90s called Peacemaker or something.
Yeah, well, that was a good movie, but nothing to do with, that was about special forces and stuff went on Kosovo and all that. Yeah.
Right.
So,
exactly. But I'd never heard of,
right. Me either.
Speaking of George Clooney, he was also brought back as Batman in The Flash, but it's all connected.
That's true. Good point.
Yeah. But no, I never heard of the character. And then you introduce the character. It's this kind of silly, almost like a knockoff of Captain America with John Cena playing the character. And it's the best thing of DCEU. It's that 8 episode. I think it's 8 episodes or 6 episodes.
It was 8.
Yeah. For season 1, which dropped a couple years ago. We're going to get season 2 apparently in the future.
That's what I heard. And
somehow they're going to explain how Peacemaker will survive the transition from the DCEU to the DCU. So I look forward to that because that was one of the ones that worked, just like how Wonder Woman was successful and obviously Aquaman did very well the first one. It made sense for some of those characters to continue, and I'm glad that we're going to see Peacemaker again. And again, it's kind of a bummer that we won't see some of these actors play these characters because I think they could have been really great, and some of them were great, but that's just how it all kind of panned out, unfortunately. Drew, do you have any final thoughts on
like I said, thanks for letting me. I enjoyed it for the run it was. Like I said, there's 15 movies. Those are the 10 that I ranked and how I like them at 10, and the last 5, right or wrong, I saw them once, and after that I didn't need to see them again. But I've enjoyed it for what it was worth, and I admire the time and effort put forward by the story writers, the producers, and especially the cast. And again, in burned in my mind, there's these, I'm always going to, until the new comes out, I'm always going to see Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. I'm still going to always see Henry Cavill as Superman, Ezra Miller as the Flash, Jason Momoa as Aquaman. And it's just, those are just some things that burn good. And obviously I'm always going to see John Cena as a Peacemaker, and that's going to be continuing. So, I enjoyed it for the runs, and I know you're a huge DC fan, so thanks for having me, especially on the ones with the Flash, the Batman, and this too, because, the Batman, again, 2022 is, again, I think a great movie, but I was like, is this going to tie back in? But those Batman movies, whether it's the Nolan one, whether it's the Batman, they just stand alone on their own, because the Batman he's Batman, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, Batman's, that's the main character for DC.
Right.
It really is. Like DC's, money character, just like how Marvel's money character is Spider-Man. DC's Batman.
I agree.
So Batman can stand alone and live in his own universe. But I do want to point out something you just mentioned as far as with the casting of these characters. For a lot of these characters, this was the first big screen portrayal we ever saw. For Wonder Woman, Gal Gadot is the first person to play Wonder Woman on the big screen. For Aquaman, Jason Momoa. Now granted, we've had a few people play Superman. We've had several people play Batman. But for a lot of these characters, we've never seen them on the silver screen before. So that's why, like you said, you're going to see these people as these characters until there's new people. That's, now you're going to get comparisons. Like whenever they cast the new Aquaman, you're going to go, wow, can this guy live up to Jason Momoa? Like mean, it'll have to be different. You can't do the same thing. And Jason Momoa is like definitely they basically he became Aquaman, but he kind of created his own version of Aquaman. And Ezra Miller too. You're right. Barry Allen is not the way Ezra Miller played Barry Allen. It's not how Barry Allen's ever been portrayed, whether the comics or in the TV shows or whatever, or the animated movies or series. So they kind of let these people put their own twist in these characters. And now in the future, we're going to have new people playing the characters for the first time. And then, but they're also going to have their own, or maybe they'll go back to more like what the comics were. I'm not sure. We'll see how it goes, but
we'll see.
But yeah. So again, sad that it's ending, but I guess it had to end because now it just didn't succeed. It didn't do what the MCU. And I mean, now honestly, people they think the MCU's on life support. I still think it will recover and put out some good movies. But it's interesting times we live in. The superhero bubble has burst, and we're just trying to figure out what's going to continue, and kind of an uneasy time in a lot of ways. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, we're going. Wrapping up on the DC and DCEU and all that. It's just, for me, at times I watch these between what Marvel movies are coming out, right or wrong. I still need my superhero fix. So in that decade, they filled in some blanks when Marvel was working on other things. So again, I enjoyed them because they're all people I grew up. I grew up watching the Super Friends, right? I'm sure you did too, and then read some of the comics too. And definitely enjoyed when the Batman went Dark Knight and they did the whole Dark Knight thing. But that again is separate. But it was good. Again, it was a good ride. I enjoyed it. And I don't feel like any time lost, and I'm looking forward to what the future brings, especially under James Gunn, because we know what he can do with things. So,
yep, I am looking forward to the same thing as well. So, and whenever that happens, we'll be there to talk about it. So, but that about does it for this portion of the episode. Want to thank everybody who joined us in the chat today. Want to thank Yesenia. Want to thank Walking with the Woods. Really appreciate y'all joining the chat. It really helps us with the show. And that's the best way to let us know what you think about the episode or the movie we're talking about, or the show, is to join our chat. We're here on YouTube, and we really, we're getting close to 300 subscribers. We really want to get to that mark. So if you could help us out, if you wonder, what do the watchers in the basement want for Christmas? We want 300 subscribers. So just get a few more people in your family to subscribe. If your dog has a YouTube channel, have your dog sign up. We'd appreciate that. Doesn't matter. Watch our videos. We appreciate it. And as again, smash the like on the live stream right now. Comment, let us know what you think about our episodes. We really appreciate that. We are also on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. We're at Watchers Basement. And hey, if you follow us on social media, be sure to tag us in posts by using the hashtag Watchers Basement. We appreciate that. So Drew, also, we're doing this video right now on YouTube. We're doing this show right now live on YouTube, but we're also on audio podcasts. So our audio podcast platform. So check us out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And be sure to give us a 5-star rating. We really appreciate that. That always helps us also. So, Drew, this is our last podcast of the year. 2023 has been a great year for the watchers. And I just want to say we appreciate people like you. You're a longtime fan, and now you're a friend of ours. And now you're on the podcast, so we appreciate you joining us. It's always great when we can have you on the show. Do you have any holiday message for anybody out there?
I just want to wish everybody a happy holiday season, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Hope you enjoy your time with friends and family. The weather's weird. Pop on Max and catch one of these movies and get caught up. But thank you so much for everything, all four of you. I know I started by being frank, but got to know all of you. Thank you for having me on all the podcasts over the last 2 years. And, I was glad to, wrap this up with you this year. And I was glad we had an interchange a couple of weeks ago when Taylor Swift was here in Titletown during the Chiefs Packers game. And we shifted to Aquaman too. But it's been fun. I always knew everybody's podcast and everybody's opinions about all the cool stuff you do with pop culture. So Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. Thanks again.
Yeah, exactly. Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to Watches the Basement. We appreciate everybody who watches and listens to our show. Thanks to everybody. So for Drew, I'm Justin saying thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We will see you next time. Happy holidays and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.